Welcome to Taj Tell 'em, and for our second special episode, what are we going to be telling them?
We're going to be talking about the second round Democratic debates, including the Delaney, the right wing of the Democratic Party, the attack on Biden, and the return of the Yay.
Oh, yeah, and all the second-tier candidates who are making waves online, and also Kamala Harris got served.
Boom. Are you ready?
Are you ready to rumble?
Welcome to part 2 of our debate coverage.
For night 2, the second part of the debate with CNN for the Democratic presidential debate.
Yeah, so, what were your expectations going into this debate?
You know what? I didn't really follow up on how they were making the format. So I didn't know until the first one. I watched it, and I knew that there was going to be a lot more contention just because, you know, Harris really won a lot of points for going after Biden.
No, that's very true. I think, she was overwhelmingly, deemed the winner of the first round of debates. And so, like anything else, you get the copycat syndrome coming in. So I think Biden definitely, he should have come ready to fight.
Yeah. But honestly, going into the debates, I was very, I think the ratings were lower for the second debates than the first one.
No, correct.
And so, I wasn't as excited about it. I just thought it was going to be more of the same things. But actually, it was somewhat surprising.
No, yeah, I think, you definitely saw an evolution of the candidates because I think everyone kind of took the lessons from the first go-around. And definitely you saw adjustments in the second.
And I think for some of the candidates, it was now that they're used to the big lights.
No, yeah, very true. I think definitely, especially the newer candidates like Andrew Yang, Marianne Williamson. I would even, put on, like, say, a Tulsi Gabbard in that mix. I think they seemed a lot more prepared this time around.
And some were less shrill.
What do you mean?
With Kristen Bell.
One change in the format I appreciated was they threatened to penalize people for interrupting, and so I think that kept it a lot more orderly.
And they also allowed a lot more back and forth.
Oh no, that's true. I felt like it was better moderated this time around. With an definitely an asterisk. I think one of the common criticisms is the use of Republican talking points from the CNN hosts. And so just to fill in our listeners, what are the pundits meaning by when they say the CNN was using Republican talking points?
Well, my take was that they were trying to. There's two sides of it. One is, hey, they're using these talking points to kind of split up the party, to just to talk about especially the healthcare portion. And the way they asked the question was, how is the middle class expecting a higher taxes for that? And which is a Republican talking point, and that's how they go against this reform.
But aren't taxes going to raise? So how is that a Republican talking point?
That was the way they combat the healthcare reform. They don't want Medicare for all. They want smaller government, and so that's what the way they would get around it is to say, hey, that means your taxes are going to go up.
Oh, but the taxes are going to go up, though, no?
Well, it depends. Depends on who gets into the White House.
No, that's fair. I mean, how I heard it explained is that if the taxes are raising is the Republican talking point. The Democratic talking point is actually your healthcare premiums will go down and disappear. And so the net benefit to most Americans is that they'll be paying less in combined taxes and healthcare premiums.
So you mean like if in the past I was paying like $6,000 in premiums and $3,000 in deductibles, but my taxes would actually only be $4,000?
That's my understanding of it, just because, once you remove the profit, component of it that the private insurance companies are taking from it, then that savings is going to get passed on to the American consumer. I'm not sure if I haven't looked closely at the financial models, but have you studied the financial models of these healthcare plans?
Well, these healthcare plans, with these models, you can only take it with a grain of salt.
That's fair. That's very true.
Because what actually happens is actually going to be far more complicated. I mean, hey, Trump went in saying that he's going to dismantle Obamacare. And to this day, he still hasn't dismantled it.
Yeah,
All he did was defund it.
And where's that wall that
Oh, well, he's still waiting for Mexico to pay for it.
I think we're going to be waiting a long time.
What? Mexico's not paying for it? Tariff.
There you go. The peso's taking a beating.
So what did you what were your thoughts about the debates?
Well, so I think it's first helpful to kind of divide it into night one and night two. I think night one, you can definitely see the split in the party between the progressives and the moderates. I think that was very clear. Even the placement of the candidates, Warren and Sanders, center stage, and the rest of the moderates kind of attacking them throughout the debate.
Left and right, too.
No, very true. And you know what's interesting is I think the healthcare debate is like the perfect example of that, in the sense that I think where candidates stand on healthcare policy is really more showing their tribal affiliation than any kind of actual meaningful policy stance. And I say that because, end of the day, say Sanders gets elected as president, he still has to contend with a Republican Senate, or even if, say, the Democrats win the Senate, they're not going to win with the supermajority. And so, the actual version of the healthcare plan is going to be a lot more watered down. And so this is where, it's more of almost a rhetorical exercise of Medicare for all versus public option.
But it's almost kind of like what Elizabeth Warren said to Delaney, where she says, who runs for president talking about what you can't do.
Yeah, that was like kind of her big zinger in this moment. And I think, what's so funny is Delaney is being painted as like the right wing of the Democratic Party now.
He's all right.
But what's so
he's a racist and he's a bigot. Okay,
he wants to build that wall. What's so interesting is the public option that was seen as like a far left idea in 2016, and so the whole party has moved like incredibly left.
No, I mean if you think about it, Obamacare is a public option.
How so?
Oh, I mean they created the marketplace, but the whole point of Obamacare was that, hey, if the health insurance don't live up to the expectations, a public option would be placed in place of it.
No, that's true. And I think that's where, we're seeing like Biden kind of carry that torch, doesn't want to pass it on. And I think,
if it worked for him, he would carry a torch. Right?
And also, what was that California congressman that dropped out of the race?
Oh, Eric Swalwell.
So yeah, he was planning to pass it, and Swalwell dropped out. I mean,
drop that torch, man. Drop that torch.
And instead, we got like Bullock from Montana that took his place.
Bullock, he looks like the guy, when you FaceTime your parents or your grandparents and you're just always talking to his nose. What are we doing here? And he's just always, he always sounds like he's out of breath too.
No, but that's actually was his first debate. So I do think you're seeing a little bit, and probably his last debate.
Yeah, he was getting jumbled up too.
No, yeah, true. I think, he was definitely not used to the big stage, but he was the number one most Google search candidate in his home state of Montana.
So like 500 searches?
460, I think it was rounded up. But who was the number one candidate for the other 49 states?
Who?
Marianne Williamson.
For the first night, huh?
Oh, yeah, first night.
Yeah. I mean, when you were saying you got the moderates attacking the progressives, but then I was going to say, and then there's Marianne Williamson.
No, true. I mean, so first debate, obviously, she was the butt of a lot of jokes with the, we'll fight Trump with love and that kind of stuff. I think Nate Silver, of his famed book, The Signal to Noise, he commented like, yeah, Marianne Williamson seems like she's out of like an SNL sketch of the debate.
I mean, during the debates, I think most of the candidates were looking at her going, why are you still here?
But strangely enough, though, I was watching debates at a public debate party at the Hammer Museum. And man, in West LA, she has a lot of support. Like, she was getting like the loudest ovations of almost any other candidate in the first night. And, to be honest with you, I don't know if it was the crowd swaying me at all, but I did resonate with some of the points that she was making because I think she kind of, number one, I don't think she has any snowball's chance.
I don't think she knows. I think she knows that she doesn't have a chance either. And that's why she's just saying whatever she wants.
Oh, yeah. And that kind of radical truth telling, I think is very valuable in this discussion. I think especially her closing remarks and how she was tackling more so the cause of a lot of these problems versus just the symptoms. Case in point, she mentioned the kind of short-term profiteering by the military-industrial complex that's getting us into these wars.
The pharmas.
Why, she asked the question of, it's not just the issue of healthcare, but why are we as Americans so unhealthy these days? And so I think those are important points to make, because I think otherwise we can just get lost in like the minutia of policy.
She was actually posing good questions.
Yeah, no, very true. She actually even called out the corruption of corporate donors that affects both parties, Republicans and Democrats. And, got a little tense up there, because she's going after, the people on her team or whatever. But I think, that kind of spirit of self-criticism is necessary because it is an issue that affects both parties.
And just, you guys keep in mind, there's about over 250 people running for president on the Democratic side. And she was one of the top 20 starting from the first debate. So she already has some following. Like she's gained some following from what she was doing.
No, definitely. I've been visiting more meditation centers, this year because I just recently got into meditation. And I've noticed though that actually Marianne Williamson has been popular here in West LA for like a long time. Like I think she regularly gives like talks, here on the West Side. And so
you have got to invite me next time.
Next time she's here, I'll extend the invite. Because she's regularly kind of criticized as being a little like woo woo, but I think, at the end of the day, perhaps that's, maybe not, we don't want that in our president, but I think it's a valuable voice to have.
Yeah. It's interesting the effect she has. It's like she does have that radical truth telling, but at the same time, you kind of cringe every time she comes on. But then you go, oh, wow, well, that was actually very thoughtful.
Yeah, true, because she's speaking from the heart. And I think, there was this really funny moment after her closing remarks, and it panned to like Delaney, and he has to do his. And he's just like, how do I follow that?
Dude, Delaney looks like he's always fucking lost, dude.
Yeah, he looks like that one King of the Hill character.
Oh. You mean the dad, right?
No, the dad's friend. He's actually bald as well.
Oh. Yeah, my friend who watched it, she's not very political, but she was watching it. She's like, who is that bald guy? He needs to get out of here.
No, but what's so funny though is like some of his points though I think are valid in terms of his criticisms of like the bringing in like kind of the realism of the cost of things. So even his presence I think is a welcome voice in the conversation.
I think he's really trying to drive at the centrists in the party, the people who are the alt-right of the Democratic Party. But I mean, what he's saying, it does make sense. There are, there are more pragmatic ways to get to what they want to do. But we all know that with these kind of elections, with politics, you really have to aim for the touchdown, aim for the end zone to get to the 30-yard line.
No, that's fair. I mean, I think a lot of this, similar to like to the point we made earlier about the healthcare policy, a lot of it is just more so rhetoric to kind of, target certain sections of the Democratic Party. And I do think it could actually turn very problematic in the general election. I think the perfect issue is the immigration issue, because it's been made into such an emotional topic with like these images of like kids in cages and things like that. It's now impossible to have like a reasoned debate about it, If you listen to the candidates, no one is saying anything about any kind of border enforcement. You get the impression that the Democratic Party is for open borders, which I would say the vast majority of Americans are not for. And so, but any kind of attempt to say like, well, maybe we should try to control it, then, you look like Trump.
Yeah. I think, yes, what's happening down at the borders is terrible. It really is. But at the same time, you're swinging all the way to the other side. If you listen to the debates, hey, this is just us regular people watching, and they're always mentioning women and children. Yeah, that's sad. But then what I see is, hey, there's going to be bad people who's going to take advantage of the decriminalization of this, and I think I think it was either Hickenlooper or O'Rourke who actually mentioned that, hey, we can just change the way we treat these people. We can still keep it criminal, but we just don't have to separate them and put them in cages.
Very
and
true.
really, the reason why they're put in cages is because Trump and Sessions, they purposely defunded that portion of it. They took the money and went for equipment and more border patrols. So that's why they have so little ways to take care of those people. So it's really a matter of funding.
Yeah, it's less an issue of policy and more on how the policy is being executed. And I just feel like that nuance is being lost. And that's where it just becomes so polarized. It's either open borders or throwing kids in cages.
I mean, hey, illegal immigration is still illegal, but Kamala Harris or, all the other district attorneys says, hey, no, we are going to make it sanctuary cities. We're not going to enforce those laws. So you have those options. So it just depends on who's in charge.
No, yeah, very true. And so it's something where we need to fix our legal immigration system. All this focus on undocumented immigrants, I think is just muddying the conversation. Because, what's interesting, the majority of the American public support immigration reform for legal immigration. And so there's a groundswell of support there. And so I just feel like these parties care more about their own interests than the American people, because the Democrats love these images of kids in cages to attack Trump with. God. And Trump loves fueling this nativist kind of furor over immigrants.
And you know what? We don't even have to look that far. Honestly, there are a bunch of countries out there. Saudi Arabia, which is one of our closest allies, sad to say. Even in Taiwan, my brother, he hires an Indonesian nanny. He pays her $800 a month, and she's 24 hours a day, takes care of the kids, live in, 360 days a year.
He keeps her passport.
If she doesn't listen, he pulls out the stick. No, but, and honestly, she's 31 years old. She's been working in Taiwan for 10 years. And now she went back to Indonesia. She owns 2 properties. She's retired now, and she's with her husband now, and they're trying to have a kid now. At 31 years old, she was able to use $800 a month because she essentially has no expenses. No living expenses because my brother feeds her and lives at his place, and she's happy. My brother's happy. Nobody in Taiwan wants to be a caregiver. Wants to take care of a kid 24 hours a day. So you're gonna have to hire somebody to do it. So why don't we have work visas? Because all these people who come over here, all they want to do is just work and make money and send the money back home. And all the people here, they just don't want these people to take advantage of the welfare system. And in Taiwan, because they have only work visas, they are only eligible for certain healthcare programs, but they're not eligible for retirements or any kind of welfare system benefits, because if they don't work, then sadly they just get sent back. And I think that's a system that we could look at, because to be honest, Americans don't want to do most of the jobs that these people are doing right now.
Yeah, no, very true. I mean, there's not a line of Americans waiting to pick strawberries, wash dishes. I'm sorry, that's just not the reality. Mm-hmm. And I think, but at the same time, the people coming to our country, they want to do these jobs. And for them, the wages that they pay are actually great wages for them.
To them, it's a phenomenal, because I was talking to an Indian doctor. He said, if you paid somebody $400 a month, an Indian person, that's like about a month of salary. A year of salary, I'm sorry, for them over there. So it's like, to them, that's a lot of money, and they could live very, very frugally here because they're just used to living frugally anyways. What other thoughts did you, who did you like from the first night?
So first night, definitely I would say Elizabeth Warren, she definitely shone. So what was interesting is you can see that 2 different strategies going on between Sanders and Warren. As we shared, they were by far, they had the bullseye, they had the most talking time. But, they each were employing different strategies. So, Sanders, he's more about the idea of a political revolution, this system's, fucked, we need to build a new one. And so, he uses in his rhetoric, a lot of storytelling, he still told that story about taking, the patients across the border to Canada to get cheaper insulin. And so, he's going a lot more for the gut. Warren, on the other hand, she's a lot more like, hey, we don't need to tear down the system. We don't need a revolution. We just need to improve the system we have through regulation. And so as a result, a lot of her rhetoric's based a lot more on like the policies and the nuance in those policies. And so,
and I think that comes from her background, right?
Oh yeah. She is a policy wonk. She's a Harvard professor. So and she helped start agencies at the Consumer Protection Bureau. And so she's very well versed in that. Who's to say which strategy is going to work better? But at this point, at least amongst the Democratic electorate of white people who read,
white people trying to gain some points.
It's definitely Elizabeth Warren, I would say. But I will say that in the general election, at least in my opinion, I think Sanders' approach is a lot more from the gut, and I think people understand the simplicity of his message a lot more effectively. But at least right now in the primaries, I would say Elizabeth Warren, she's definitely ascending.
One thing about Elizabeth, I think I agree with you. I think she definitely did a good job in the first night. But the thing is, once the first word out of her mouth for her opening statement was Donald Trump, and she mentioned him 3 times in a span of the first 25 seconds of her opening statement. And almost every single time she opens her mouth, it was something to do with Donald Trump. Like, I wish she would just say, hey, these are my policies. These are policies that are better. And that's why it's going to beat Donald Trump. It should be an afterthought.
No, I mean, I agree. I think it's like they got this Trump on the brain. And I think, her biggest gaffe is the whole like Pocahontas thing that happened.
Oh, geez.
And again, she's got to take her attention away from Donald Trump, more upon the issues that people care about, because the news reports on Trump enough.
So we talked about Warren and, any other people that stood out to you? What do you think about Mayor Butt?
So, what's interesting is that he seems to become more and more invisible. I think he's caught in no man's land between like the progressives and the moderates. Like he's trying to kind of have his cake and eat it too, both him and Kamala. And I don't think it's working for either one of them.
He's playing the age card, but when they question him about his age versus Sanders' age, he backed off.
He did.
He said it's all about vision. And that just gave, Sanders his cue, and he's like, "Yes, it's about vision."
Yeah, I have 2 thoughts on this. So, what's interesting is I was hearing from a friend of mine. He was saying that, he initially really liked Buttigieg's campaign because, well, for his own reason. The reason was that Buttigieg actually was one of the first candidates to talk about intergenerational theft. The idea that the baby boomers have really kind of, mortgaged the future, i.e., our future as millennials. Mm-hmm. And so he was like, finally someone's talking about it. But, sure enough, he kind of backed away from that. And I think, 1, it could be for donor support. Yes. Or 2, maybe he wants to spot the Joe Biden / Bernie Sanders administration, And so
he's still young. Yeah, he's still got a long career.
He's still young. He wants to stay in politics. He's not an outsider. So I think he's really jockeying for a cabinet
I'm pretty
spot.
Sure he wants to get out of South Bend, Indiana.
No, yeah, very true. Because it's turning into a disaster for him with the whole police shooting thing that's been going on. Mm-hmm. So I don't think he can really run on that record as well. And so I think he knows his goose is cooked, and so he's just like, well, 2024, that's what I'm aiming for.
And then Williamson kind of called him out on the whole donor thing.
True.
And so did O'Rourke, I believe.
No, yeah, very true. Yeah, that guy loves big corporate money, So he actually, for his position in the polls, his fundraising numbers are tremendous.
Dude, he is raking it in. I mean, hey, if you're 37 years old and you see that kind of money, hey, you're going to think about what's the next, 42 years or 43 years out of your life.
Yeah, Buttigieg, he's a smart guy, So, I think he's already succeeded in elevating his national profile by running. And so, I think 2024, 2028, I think that's where his sights are set.
Yeah, and a lot of these things, it's, Trump at the beginning, I don't think he wanted to be president. I think it was just to raise his profile.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely not. Close friend of his, like Howard Stern, they've shared that thought. I think it's like the dog who chases cars and he doesn't know what to do once he catches one.
He knows what to do. He just tariff.
Yeah.
Tariff.
Yeah, and just make his daughter into, our Secretary of State,
I mean, I don't mind seeing her in pictures, but honestly, the settings that she's been in, it's ridiculous. Like, why is she talking to the president of the IMF?
No, fair. That's very fair. You know, like, yeah, she has really no business, being a senior advisor.
Yeah, no.
And so, I think that's just more fuel in the fire to get that guy out of there.
Yeah, I'm gonna put Milo right here and start to do the podcast for me.
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna lose my job as co-host.
Right, and then I mean, any other people that stood out to you?
So what's fun about watching the debates with an audience is you get like an immediate sense of like how people are responding to them. So what was so funny, at least in West LA, whenever Ryan was on the screen, people just started laughing because he just always looked scared.
That guy, I mean, he was just getting bodied left. I mean, first time was with Tulsi. Taliban was the one who attacked us. No, it's Al Qaeda. And now it's with Sanders. Hey, you don't know that. Yeah, I do, because I wrote the damn bill. I love Sanders, dude. I really do like that guy, because he plays that angry grandpa.
No, yeah, I love that exchange with Hickenlooper, where Hickenlooper's like, you just can't throw your hands up in the air. Like,
well, I'll do it.
And so, I think that's actually why I think Sanders probably stands the best chance against Trump. It's because he knows how to use humor and his own anger to kind of deflect against Trump.
Yep.
He knows how to get at the gut, especially. And that's why I think Sanders has populist appeal.
And also, Sanders has this belief. I mean, he, to his core, he believes in what he believes. Like, he really thinks that this, I mean, it is true. It's really rigged against the American people, against normal people. And he really believes that this is his mission to change the system. And I love the fact that he's been talking the same thing for ages. He was one of the people at the beginning sitting in with the civil rights movement. His only arrest record was because he was doing a sit-in with the civil rights movement. I mean, this guy, he is legit.
Oh, yeah, he voted against the Iraq war, so this man has executed good judgment, like, from the start. And so, I think the only hit against him is age. But, hey, look who's in office right now. Look at Joe Biden. It's not like the alternatives are all that young. I mean, even Elizabeth Warren is fairly old.
Yeah, I think she's 70.
Oh, yeah, she's in her 70s as well.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, she looks good, though.
Yeah, she does. What's so interesting is that, part of our next episode, spoiler alert, is going to be on Elizabeth Warren. And I was doing some research, watching older clips of her on, like, the Jon Stewart show. And yeah, her image has definitely, she's gotten the right publicist, because she used to have this really weird, like, bob cut. It just wasn't working.
Well, however good her publicist was, I wonder what the publicist was thinking when she saw Amy Klobuchar.
Yeah, I
they
mean,
were walking in that elevator and they're going, "Oh, I like what you're wearing."
Yeah, what's so funny is that Klobuchar actually, on paper is probably one of the best, like, moderate candidates, but just her image, man. Like, I think it's a combination of a couple things. I think it's one, she is trying to be too perfect. She's trying to be a politician too much. So you don't, even to this day, you still don't really get a sense of who she is.
Nope, not at all.
And two. At the end of the day, like, this is a popularity contest. Like, you need that kind of, like, it factor. Like, Obama had it. I mean, Trump, unfortunately, has it. Sanders has it. Mm-hmm. Klobuchar doesn't have it.
Klobuchar, Hickenlooper, Ryan has that Manchurian Candidate kind of empty look to him. Delaney also has that Mr. Potato Head look to him. But, Warren has that whole, like, man, we're running out of time. Get your sweater on. It's cold outside. Hurry up.
Yeah. She seems more like a little like, she has like a nervous energy quality to her. Mm-hmm. And I think that, it doesn't necessarily project strength. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where someone like a Kamala Harris, I think definitely, has more stage presence. As we shared, Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. If Warren was sitting across the table from Putin.
Oh, true. I think that's, that's kind of that's kind of like the really like sad thing about, just the nature of politics. So much of it is about like perception. And so, as like silly as it is, that's where someone like Oprah Winfrey would win this election in a heartbeat.
No, we need The Rock as the president.
Sadly, he'll probably win too, I mean, like, gosh, is this what it's come to,
He just has to look at the camera when they ask the stupid question. He just has to raise one eyebrow.
No, there you go. I mean, Jesse Ventura, won the governorship of Minnesota. So, professional wrestler, they're professional performers.
But to give him credit, he ran a great campaign.
Jesse Ventura.
Yes, he ran a really good campaign. It wasn't because he used that to his advantage. He used the wrestling thing, and his opponent let his guard down because he thought he was just running against a wrestler.
No, I mean, you could even say Trump masterfully did that in 2016.
Well, I think Hillary shot herself in the foot on that one because she allegedly told the networks to really prop up Trump against the other people. Because she thought she was just going to just plow through him during the debates. And
yeah, Clinton, known for her good judgment.
But talking about appearances, what about Tulsi in that white?
Woo! Yeah, I was like, damn, AOC.
Dude,
step aside.
she was just the white knight in that shining armor, man. She should have rode in that white horse.
Yeah, she had a nice tan going. I mean, she was looking good.
Yeah. Good. I mean, it wasn't like it was. She accented her natural beauty, but also she was just like that made her look solid.
No, yeah, very true. If this was a beauty contest, she would have won it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and it takes guts to wear white.
I mean, but it is, I hear, a sign of like the women like suffrage movement. So it's kind of her nod to like women's issues.
I think during Trump's State of the Union, all the Congress women wore white.
Yep, very true. Yeah, very true. Hillary, on the night she thought she was going to win, was wearing white.
There's no sound effect, but it would be a wah wah. So yeah, what did you think about before we move on to night 2? What did you have anything else to add for night 1?
I will say this. This is kind of both for night 1 and night 2, but I think you could definitely see it in night 1. It's the idea of as I was watching it, I was reminded of like the definition of like charisma. Oftentimes charisma is painted as like a characteristic that someone has. And I don't necessarily see it that way. I see it more so as like what charisma really is speaking to the heart of what's inside the audience, and I think someone who did that more than anyone else in night 1 was Marianne Williamson.
Yes.
Because, at the end of the day, American people are frustrated about the corruption. At the end of the day, American people do sense there is this, what Marianne Williamson refers to as a psychic darkness in our society right now. I mean, we're recording this like, unfortunately days after like, some of the worst mass shootings in America.
Dayton, Ohio, and El Paso, Texas.
Very true. And even a few days before that,
Gilroy.
Here in California. And so I think it's something where, she is speaking to, the spiritual, emotional state of our country. And, a lot of people like to be very dismissive of her, because of her kind of woo language. But, as one of the roles as, the leader of this country is also our moral spiritual leader. I think we just got accustomed to not expecting that because, of who's in office right now. But I think whoever's going to, take his place in 2020, they need to speak to the soul of the American people because I think everyone senses something is wrong and we want to hear our leaders like address this problem. What's interesting is like, as I shared, the audience in West LA, very pro Marianne Williamson. One gentleman in particular, he was this very flamboyant gay man, and he was saying, "We only have one life, people. Swing for the fences or go home." And so he was referring to, supporting Marianne Williamson. But he was also saying that, she's not afraid of her heart; it's a thing in her body. And I think, but I do, it's he puts it in a very comedic way. But but I think he's getting at a fundamental truth of something where it's just like, if you look at so many of those closing statements, it's so robotic, it's so carefully scripted. And I think the American people, like, we're tired of that. Like, I think Clinton losing 2016 is proof that the American people, it's like, stop lying to us. Like, we know when you're just like putting forward this like fake, perfect image, like, give us the truth or just go home.
Yep.
And I think the polls are showing that.
Night 2. Then, I mean, I to our audience, we actually recorded a Kamala episode, and my co-host here, T, he was spot on. He educated me about Kamala's history. So why don't you fill us in on that one?
Oh yeah, so spoiler alert. Looking back at her record, the big thing that really troubled me was her record as Attorney General, as District Attorney of San Francisco, and especially her willingness to withhold information that would set an innocent man free from death row, but also many other cases of her, for example, keeping an innocent man in jail because he just filed his, paperwork a little late. She is a nasty woman. And I was so glad that someone, Tulsi Gabbard, took her to
White
task.
Knight.
Oh, yeah, I saw, they had a live stream of like Twitter feeds, and I saw this great tweet where it was like, oh, I didn't know they were cooking food at the debate because Kamala got served.
And you saw Kamala was not prepared for that. I mean, she knows her history. She was not prepared to get hit with that one. And during that debate, she was presented with that information. Then she said some bullshit about how she tried to reform the criminal system. Went back to Tulsi. Tulsi gave her the uppercut afterwards about making the prisoners work for free, slave labor. And then she went back to her, and then she turned and she's like, oh, I want to bring the conversation back to Biden.
Yeah, and she was trying to do some clever misdirection, but, those were heavy hits. Those were haymakers that Tulsi was throwing. And I think it showed that, Kamala Harris, she's all offense, no defense.
And the timing of that by Tulsi, to her, knowing that she has this and she was just holding it, and that perfect moment when Jake Tapper went to her and boom, she's like, hey, that concerns me.
And it should concern all of us, because I think it shows that, one, she's a huge hypocrite. To her point, laughing about smoking marijuana, but putting 1,500 people in jail for that.
Yeah.
Like, how dare you? This isn't like just a policy matter. Like, these are 1,500 people's lives, and I think she gets a huge pass, because she is, has some African-American ancestry, but her policies and the way she governs is terrible for the African-American community. Like, she's even furthering this, prison industrial complex.
And as people who partake, like, I could have been arrested and been sent to jail under her reign.
Well, they don't put guys like you in
But honestly, hey, then later on, we legalized marijuana. I felt like she could have made a few calls at that point.
True.
And at that point, she actually went up even higher. She was a senator.
No, yeah, very true. Yeah, she has no desire whatsoever to either apologize or try to make up for, the sins of her past. She won't even address it,
During the debate, she didn't even address that issue. She didn't even deny it. So keep in mind, guys, if you watch that clip again, she did not deny. And even in any subsequent interviews, she did not deny those allegations. And plus, they're not allegations. They're the truth.
That's fact.
And we also covered this in the podcast about Kamala Harris, but also Tulsi didn't hit her with that whole predatory priest issue.
That's true. Yeah, she was withholding evidence that would have helped victims of sexual abuse on the part of these scumbag priests. And she was trying to claim, oh no, we want to respect the wishes of the victims, but the victims are saying, hey, release that crap. And that's what's so perplexing. Like, she is just always on the wrong side, always on the side of power.
Well, then, and exactly, she is that kind of person that's hungry for power. You could sense it. She wants to be president. She wants to increase her profile. And she's a fucking lawyer. Come on.
I mean, she's willing to do anything or anyone, Willie Brown, to further her own career.
Oh, man. Yeah, that Willie Brown thing. Hey, you know what? That's not a knock on all lawyers. I do have good lawyer friends out there.
My sister's a lawyer.
Andrew Yang was a corporate lawyer for 5 miserable months. Fair. But, I mean, honestly, like, hey, you know the law. I mean, once you get really deep into a topic or kind of a subject, you kind of know the inequities of it, And I think for somebody to become an AG and a DA of California, like, fuck, you should have known that this is a fucked up law, especially if you smoked marijuana in college. Like, how harmless that shit is.
Yeah, no, fair. And that shows she is not a woman of character. Like whatever is good for Kamala does. And that's why I like that hashtag Kamala so fake that's trending, because she is.
So what did you think about her response afterwards and her team's response?
I think she's just trying to run. She's trying to run away from the truth, and she's not going to be able to do it. We live in the age of the internet. All this stuff is very easily accessible, so I just feel like she needs to own it. You know?
And I think the post-debate interview with Anderson Cooper, it's funny. Anderson Cooper made her watch the whole clip again. It's like if you got knocked out by the heavyweight and they made you watch the
what happened here?
How did you get uppercutted that way?
Yeah, the left hook just really sent you down to the canvas.
I think you lost a tooth right there, buddy. But yeah, and then what was her response?
I didn't watch the post.
So her response was, you know what? Not to be immodest, but I am a top tier candidate. And it's not surprising that I'm going to get attacked by somebody who's polling at 0 or 1% to get up higher so they can qualify for the next debate.
AKA the Kamala Harris playbook going after Biden.
Oh, no, it's not okay when they do it. It's okay when I do it. And also, her team started this whole Russian bot thing.
What Russian bot?
They kept saying that all the support for Tulsi on this whole topic was just because of the Russian bots. These Russian bots are, elevating this issue really high.
Taking a page from the Hillary Clinton playbook. Oh, I didn't lose the election. It was the Russians. Oh.
So she is literally right now criticizing or allegedly, accusing Tulsi Gabbard of being supported by Russians, and Tulsi Gabbard is a armed forces major right now. So she's saying that somebody in the armed forces is actually being compromised, and she's also a congressperson right now.
Yeah, I mean, this is where, this kind of stuff I hate about the Democratic Party. Like, they don't want to own, like, their responsibility. Like, they like to peddle in these, like, stupid fucking lies about, like, I mean, Russia had some influence, on our election, like buying like Facebook ads and like starting Facebook groups or whatever. But hey, guess what? Like Kamala, you still put innocent people in jail, and Hillary, you still fucked up, in the running.
She still didn't deny those allegations. She's still doing it. And the thing is, what I hate is the whole media doesn't press her on it.
You know what it is? It's because they are still holding on that she is like the moderate alternative to Biden.
So they have a vested interest to keep her in the race.
They do, because what's interesting about like CNN is that, just like how our politicians are bought by their donors, CNN is bought by their advertisers.
Yeah.
And so, you can even see it in the way that they're using the Republican talking points, but also in the way that they're trying to like pit these candidates against each other in a way just to muddle the conversation about healthcare.
So this is why I feel like for our generation, I don't think this format works anymore. I want to start a movement, and I think it's already a movement. Like, if people want Joe Rogan to moderate, they want the long form. They don't want 10, 20 candidates all at once talking and competing and trying to get 2 minutes and 58 seconds in.
No, yeah, true. I mean, like this format rewards like the quick soundbite, and I think you got a chance to see a lot of candidates change in their approach. Some more successful than others. I think, but in some ways, it is what it is, and I think that's where you can almost see this is like a test. If the candidates are able to still get their message across despite the limitations of this format, then it shows, perhaps they're good at problem solving in this case. They're good at solving our nation's problems.
But at the same time, you have to really dumb down the ideas, and you can't get a lot of correct ideas across. So, I mean, okay, if the DNC is so concerned about, or the Democratic Party is so concerned about infighting, this is the worst way to set up a debate. The way CNN actually tried to ask those questions was baiting them.
No, yeah, very true. I mean, they want, even for their own purposes of like ad revenue and like hits on the internet or whatever, they want these kind of really like punchy kind of like exchanges and lines. And so, all the incentives are backwards. I guess I'm just trying to put lipstick on a pig. I'm saying like it's messed up the way it is, but hey, here's the silver lining, And I think that's where, I think that you saw a lot more like zingers this time around. These great one-liners. I think Andrew Yang's opener, I think, was excellent. I think he finally pulled that, what is the opposite of Donald Trump? But an
Asian man who likes math.
He pulled that line out that we saw him
I love that one. Also, we also saw Gillibrand try to attack Biden on that woman issue.
Yeah, I mean, once again, I think Gillibrand, she is a dangerous idiot, like...
Okay, explain, elaborate.
Because she just constantly uses like the worst aspects of identity politics. Like, you would think that the way her rhetoric is, like, as a man, she's going to do shit for, as men, she's going to do shit for us, like she's just talking about women this, all through the lens of victimhood, which I think is actually very harmful to women. Because I think if women are constantly painted just as victims, then they're not seen as capable individuals. I think...
And they're very capable individuals.
They are. And that's why I think, people like Gillibrand, they've ruined the term feminism, because now feminism just looks like bitching and complaining, like versus saying, hey, wait a minute, women have something valuable, to add to society, our conversation, etc., and we should treat them as equals, but instead it's like, oh, poor women, oh, won't someone think of the women, and it's very disingenuous because it's just coming as her trying to, use this to virtue signal and to, try to score points and try to look like she's so woke or whatever. And I think it's, there's this one exchange I think was classic dangerous idiot Gillibrand, where she was just like, well, it shouldn't only be the only people of color, Kamala Harris and Cory Booker up there. It's like, bitch, Andrew Yang ain't a person of color. Tulsi Gabbard isn't a person of color. Like, you stupid bitch.
And then she called herself on white privilege. Like, what? I don't understand that. Like, hey, yes, you do have white privilege, but don't call yourself out on white privilege because you don't know what white privilege looks like.
No, exactly. And I think it's something where it's this virtue signaling. She's trying to score points. And it's just something where it's like, it just degrades the entire conversation.
Yeah. And the whole thing about the article about, hey, Biden, you said that women working is going to deteriorate families. Remember that? She actually telegraphed that like a week ago. So Biden was ready for it. Biden was like, hey, you came to me, you went with me to these ceremonies, you were very friendly with me, and all of a sudden you turned just because now you're running for president?
Not true, yeah. And I don't think like what woman really...
Her campaign was not good. It's not good. It's
like
not
what woman really
advice.
even cares, about what Biden said like years ago, like no one believes that that's indicative of his policy stance today. So like this is like a waste of time.
Yeah.
So yeah, Gillibrand, I'm going to be very happy when the fall debates comes and she's not going to be there.
Yeah, she's not going to be there. So I think Cory Booker did pretty well that night. He had that really good line, you're dipping in the Kool-Aid and you don't even know what the flavor is.
Yeah, how long was he sitting on that one?
Oh gosh, he was waiting for that line, man. And he knew it was gonna be delivered to Biden.
No, fair. I mean, and I think that's where, you can tell that the tact to move to these kind of sound bites, all the candidates are trying. I mean, Gillibrand, to her credit, she had that Clorox line that seemed to hit and things like that.
Well, Gillibrand's bought Clorox. They gave her money, I bet.
The Clorox lobby. Procter and Gamble.
So clean, we cleaned the White House.
There you go. There you go.
But yeah, and then so who else did you feel like that shine that night?
Our boy Andrew Yang.
Yang gang.
Yeah, there you go, man. Like, he redeemed himself. His return of the Yang.
Return of the Yang. Let Yang speak.
There you go. I mean, now, like, actually, you know what's so funny? Everyone had mic problems.
Dude, and even though that was the case, Yang still spoke the least amount of time of all the candidates.
No, that's very true. I mean, that's unfortunate. You know, I think it's going to persist. But, you know, the discrepancy wasn't as wide. You know, I think because of the formatting. Also, I think because, you know, he had, like, some great points. I think the perspectives he gave were, like, really, I mean, even if Yang doesn't end up winning, you know,
he shifted the conversation.
He shifted the conversation. You know, I loved his point about when they were talking about illegal immigration. He was saying this, like, hey, you know, let's stop talking about these damn sob stories like we're just doing running a charity here, and let's talk about how someone like my dad, an immigrant from Taiwan, created 65 patents for American companies like IBM and GE.
That's a win for America.
Yeah, it's a win for America. It's not like, you know, America gains by increasing, you know, the right kind of legal immigration. And so that's where we should be focusing the conversation. Like, this isn't we're not running a charity. Like, this is a win-win. And so I think he had a great point there. He had a great point when it came to healthcare. You know, he's talking about, hey, you know, this is going to be good for American businesses, you know, because number one reason that they don't hire is because they're concerned about the healthcare costs. And so I just feel like these, you know, everyone always likes talking about it from like this sob story of like, oh, these poor people don't have health insurance. It's like, wait a minute. Like, yes, perhaps that's part of the conversation, but let's focus on like how this is going to be a win for all of us.
Yeah, if it's a win-win, it's a no-brainer. Like, people are going to vote for it. Don't say, hey, you guys are wrong. You guys are treating these people terribly. Like, you know, you demonize the other group. Nobody's going to want to listen to you because they don't think they're demons.
Because like when has guilt and shame ever brought about meaningful change? You know, like, I just feel like maybe too many people grew up as like strict dads or something.
Yeah, maybe. But I mean, Yang, the way he was laser focused. You knew he came out to fight. Not against anybody. So he was laser focused on the issues because the question was, you know, hey, Kamala Harris's plan was this. Why is she wrong? You know?
Yeah, and I think, you know, this is an example as well where he knew how to steer the conversation back to his signature issue of universal basic income, aka the freedom dividend, where he's like, hey, you know, to that point about Kamala Harris's plan to help women, he's like, well, you know, guess what? There's a better idea. You know, for that waitress who is being like sexually harassed.
Oh, man, that woman in question, yeah.
Yeah, he's just like, hey, you know, you need to put money in her hands so she can get herself out of that situation. You know, like all this empty rhetoric, meaningless to someone in that position. And I think that's someone where Yang, you know, although he does come from somewhat of a privileged background, I think because of his experience starting Venture for America, I would also say his experience being a minority, he knows what it's like, you know, to be on the wrong end of the stick. And he's like, hey, it sucks here. And all that rhetoric, you know, it's well-intentioned, meaningless, you know.
And he also said with this healthcare thing, he says, hey, if we tie healthcare to work, that's less mobility for people. Hey, if my healthcare, you know, when he was running for president, when he told his wife that, his wife's first question was, what are you going to do about health insurance?
Yeah, there you go. And, you know, this is coming from a man, and it affects all Americans because Andrew Yang, he's a millionaire at that point, you know, but it's still an issue.
I do health insurance. I can tell you, I have CEOs from Cisco retiring, and they're asking me, what am I going to do with my health insurance? I mean, no, it doesn't matter what your wealth is because if there's insurance, why aren't you getting it?
Yeah, and also it's very complicated, you know, and so it's something where, you know, I just feel like, you know, obviously covering, you know, the cost issue of who's paying for it, but also like simplifying it so the Americans know, you know, what they're getting with their money, you know, because oftentimes with private insurance, like you don't know what's covered, what's not until it's almost too late. And so that's something where, you know, they should be speaking about these issues that actually affect everyday Americans that every Americans care about, you know, rather than all this like empty rhetoric. You know, and like, illegal immigrants, whether they're going to get health insurance, like this is a waste of time in this conversation.
And you know, a lot of people, the criticism is, you know, Andrew Yang is a one issue candidate, but my argument is that he has one solution for a lot of issues. It's not a one issue candidate. Inslee is a one issue candidate. He's always talking about climate change. That's one issue. But with the freedom dividend, it's one solution for a lot of issues. You know, it opens up a lot of things for people when you give them money, and money is power. That's what we were fighting for in the fucking debates, because we're saying there's too much money interest in Washington, D.C. Well, let's take some of those money and give it to people.
Yeah, I mean, you know what it is? It's just like, I just feel like too many people are operating off this conventional wisdom where it's like, I got a plan for that. So it's like they want the government to do it, to put the spoon feed them. It's like, no, don't give me money that I could as an individual use for my education. Give me an education plan, you know? And it's like, bitch, you know, like how, you know, the American people aren't that stupid, you know, like you give people money, they know where to put it, whether it be in purchasing medication, whether it be in furthering their education, you know, like once you empower people, they're not idiots. They know how to spend it. Don't get me wrong. There's going to be the handful of idiots who are like buy the newest iPhone or whatever, you know, and you know what? Fuck
hey, yo, man.
Hey, no. I mean, you know, we can afford it, but I'm saying like if you can't afford it, you know, like, and you're wasting your money on stupid stuff, well, you know what? You've made your bed. Now you sleep in it. You know, you can't say no, you didn't. No. The government didn't try to help you.
I totally understand.
And so for those of us, you know, I think that's where the role of personal responsibility has to play a role. And that's why I think like Andrew Yang's universal basic income is way better than all these thoughts about what reparations, free college, you know, like all this stuff, like it's just nonsense. You know?
Because when you put forth a government plan, it's you telling the people what they want.
Oh yeah, and there's needless bureaucracy in that too. You know, how to assess like, you know, okay, you know, how's it being spent? You know, like we got to have a bidding process, et cetera,
you need a committee to watch that committee and another committee to watch that committee. Like that's a lot of costs.
Yeah, no, very true. And it's also something where it's like, you know, you're also isolating a lot of the American public. Something like Kamala Harris is like boneheaded lift act. It's something where it's like, you know, like 29% of Americans, the quote unquote upper middle class, or in LA, just the middle class, you know, won't benefit at all from it. You know, so like, you know, what's the point of these kind of policies? He did have a gaffe though. I would say one gaffe.
Oh, the climate change?
Yeah, his answer to climate change.
Explain.
You know, so, you know, they were asking the candidates about, you know, their policy on climate change. And he had a rather glib response saying like, effectively, it's too late. Here's some money to run for the higher ground. And, you know, as a Yang supporter, I knew where he was coming from in the sense that he of course is a believer in climate change. And of course, his administration is going to be, you know, entering the Paris Climate Accords, blah, 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 blah. You know, like the standard, you know, like turnkey, you know, policy that all the candidates have.
No, but he also has other policies to go along with that too.
Oh, go on.
Well, one of his, he looks at the problem at the source. So he's saying that, hey, right now, America is only responsible for 15% of climate change, of carbon emission, I'm sorry. So it's not logical for us to think that we can have a significant change to climate change just from our efforts. What we need to do is we actually have to export clean energy to countries who are wanting to adopt dirty energy, you know, and he's also looking at nuclear. Now, obviously, with the Chernobyl show going on on HBO, there's going to be a lot of pushback. But, you know, if you look at the scientific community, and even Southern California Edison, they all admit nuclear is the future. You have to do that. Otherwise, we just don't have enough energy. Otherwise, we're just going to have to keep kowtowing to Saudi Arabia and keep supporting these regime change wars. You know, it's a question of energy. So he's saying that, hey, now China is leading in green energy, and they're exporting all their dirty energy to where? South America and Africa. So he's saying, let's get at the problem. Let's stop that from happening first. Those countries, they need energy. Let's get our green energy over to them.
Yeah, and I think, you know, so, you know, to your point, you know, he does have a very substantive policy. I think he is the one candidate talking about, hey, you know, America is only 15% of like global emissions, you know, worldwide. And so, you know, we need to look outward if we really want to address this problem. I think that, but this is where his gaffe came in. He didn't say that though during the debate.
He didn't.
You know, he instead tried to like make it swing back to universal basic income, which I understand, you know, from a strategic perspective, you know, you want to take as many opportunities as you can. But I think this is the one time where, you know, he showed.
It's harder to connect that dot.
Exactly. And also, I think if you're going to try to connect it, you can't also just be dismissive, though, of the topic at hand, because, to our earlier point, talking about women's issues and how he's able to connect universal basic income to it, he was showing how, hey, how universal basic income actually helps solve this issue. But I think to your point, with climate change, universal basic income,
it's two huge concepts that you're trying to connect, which is, hey, you get the boots off people's throats. Stop, if they are not worried about how to put food on their table, they can think about the world at large and the planet at large, and they can think about the polar bears. I don't give a fuck about polar bears if I can't fucking eat tomorrow.
No, very true. And so that's kind of his comment from the first debate. And I just think whoever was doing debate prep for him, I think they dropped the ball when it came to the climate change answer. But, I don't want to focus just on, this one thing that he did wrong. I think overall, though, as even shown by the swell of support after the debates, I think he did a great job. Well, thank you for listening to another episode of Taj Tell. If you like what you heard, go ahead and just smash that subscribe button.
Or give us a like, a thumbs up, anything to help. And make sure you turn on the notifications.
5-star rating on Apple Podcasts.
I don't know what the ratings are. A lot of or Google.